In this video, we're going to look at different models of lobbying and influence. Lobbyists are firms or individuals that try to influence the policy-making process. They have an idea and they want to try and influence government to make sure that their idea gets put into action. And we've got different models for trying to understand this relationship. There's the iron triangle model and the revolving door model. And these are just different ways of trying to describe the relationships between some of the different actors, institutions, and incentives that might characterize this relationship. Let's start with the iron triangle. This is informed by the ideas of economist James Buchanan, which is a public choice approach to understanding politics. We can see in our model there's three different groups of people. There's the legislators that make the laws, the bureaucracy, which might include policy analysts or deputy ministers or regulators that actually implement the policy and oversee it, and then the pressure groups, the lobbyists and advocacy groups that want to see their ideas put into action. Now, their goal from the lobbyists, they sort of start this relationship with the goal of trying to get their policy implemented. The people that work in the federal bureaucracy, these could be deputy ministers, these could be heads of agencies, they naturally want to see their influence grow. If they've got programs that they administer, they want to see those programs larger. If they've got staff, they want to see their staff and their budgets grow. And so they have an interest in trying to make sure that their policy their policy insight and influence grows in scope. Now, the legislators, the people that run for office and choose different policies to adopt, they want to seek re-election. They want to make sure that they're doing things that are going to get them re-elected. And in some cases, that means funding. They need to raise money for election campaigns. And so they want to do what their key supporters will do. It doesn't hurt for them to have an eye on a post-political career. These could be key decision makers like cabinet ministers or committee chairs, people with influence to try and help decide what policies the government wants to pursue. And the analogy of a triangle comes from the idea of reciprocal relationships between all of these groups. Each of these groups wants something from the other. And, the pressure group wants to influence the policy. Bureaucracies want to see their policies grow, so they also influence legislators. Legislators make the decisions. And, of course, they have a desire to get reelected. So all of these relationships have some kind of reciprocal element. The one group that's not in this triangle are the voters and the taxpayers. The people that ostensibly choose the legislators might not get the same influence in the policy process as these pressure groups or these lobbyists. What about the revolving door? Well, the revolving door is very similar in principle. The idea that there is the state, the political state, the people that are elected, and then the administrative state, the regulators, the policy analysts, the deputy ministers, the people that actually run the government on a day-to-day basis. The firms, whether they be dedicated lobbyists or industry, members of industry, they want to influence the policy-making process. And this creates a network of people around certain specialized areas. And you will see sometimes people that work in industry go work for the agency that regulates that industry. And in turn, some of the regulators might go and get jobs at firms in that industry. And so that sort of back and forth movement is called the revolving door. Same happens with the political state. People might come from a business background to run for office. They get into office, try and maybe steer favors back to that industry, and then maybe when they leave politics, they can go back and work for the same firm or perhaps in the same sector. And so that relationship of turnover between the private sector and the government and then back again is sometimes considered a revolving door. Just to recap, we want to look at these two models, iron triangles, revolving doors. Both of these are based on the idea of elite accommodation. There's a selective group of highly educated, highly influential people that rise to the top of both industry and governments, and they're not representative. They're not representative of the wider population. And so these people that head industry and head firms end up having disproportionate influence because they end up working with each other to try and influence policy. Now, the people that get left out of this are the voters and the taxpayers. And the cost burden, if these sort of elite influencers are selecting policies that aren't in the best interest of voters and taxpayers, the costs are spread out amongst the entire population, and so they're relatively small, and voters tend up just sort of eating the cost and living with it.